Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're a new viewer, thank you for clicking on the video. Last week I uploaded a video about a guitar solo that I found particularly challenging to pull off in a short amount of time, on a time crunch if you will, for my cover band, for the cover band that I play in actually. And I kind of explained the ordeal I went through, and you know, it's a pretty cool one. Check it out, it's linked somewhere here on the screen. And what made me really happy about uploading that video was that finally, I got a few comments on it, and for a small channel, it means a lot. Thank you for doing that. And in those comments, I had two users, one with kind of like differing opinions about how somebody would approach actually playing in a cover band and whether it's good or not to just learn everything like note for note as it was recorded by the particular artists, or if you should add some of your own to it. Don't Be A Jukebox was one of the comments, and the other person was actually kind of advocating for doing the work, you know, putting the work in and not risking to seem a bit lazy just by constantly improvising over like harder parts of songs or solos, because that's what it seems like, at least lately, to that person. And I just kind of wanted to, besides thank them for this great idea for a video, I just wanted to say where I come from and what's my philosophy on this. And in my opinion, I think it's navigating a very, very fine line between those 2 points. They're both very, very valid points, don't get me wrong. But there is a certain time and place for everything, in my opinion, and this is how I go about doing things. So the first thing I've learned while playing in cover bands is that, especially at events like weddings or any event really, it's not about you. It's not even about the band. It could have been your band or anybody else's band who the event planner or the bride and groom or the event planning company found available online and looked at some demos. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the expectations of the people that gather at these events are not to go to a concert or like a jazz setting or anything like that, improvisational music. Hell, a lot of them don't even care. They're just there to celebrate their friends, if it's a wedding, for example, have a lot of drinks, and just rock out to tunes that they've heard on the radio that are popular or that are classics. Here's where actually putting in the work and trying to learn the tunes as closely to the original as possible actually pays off, in my opinion, because those people want to recognize those songs. They want to be able to actually figure out, hey, I kind of know this one. I don't know what it's called. I don't know who the artist playing it is. Frankly, I don't really care at this point, but it sounds like something I've heard on the radio and I want to just dance to and have a good time. So that would be the perfect argument for actually trying to get the songs down as close as possible to the originals. Now, this is a very important thing that I've learned over the years, and I've gotten to appreciate it more and more. However, you still want to be a guitar player, you still want to be, you know, rocking out to certain things. So my stance on this kind of would be, you know, pick your spots. Pick your spots wisely. And what do I mean by that? If the song is really iconic and there's a guitar solo in there that has a certain melody to it that everybody knows, that's kind of something that you'd want to play note for note just because it makes the song easily recognizable to the audience and stuff like that. Or you might want to play the entire solo. Now, the next point where I actually agree with learning things as closely as possible to the original, or actually note for note, would be solos that I find especially, you know, like challenging, that have a certain technique that I haven't worked on in a while, or, you know, it's just that guitarist ego. Sometimes you see somebody playing that difficult line or whatever it is, and you say, I want to be able to pull that off. I want to try that. And 9 out of 10 times it's also going to be in a different key because you're going to be working with different singers, and, you know, rarely do you play stuff from the actual original key in which it was written and recorded. So that was the motivation behind actually pulling off that flamenco-esque solo that I've talked about in my previous video, and here's a little snippet of it just so you can actually check it out if you haven't seen the other video. Now, obviously, this approach is very beneficial to you as a musician if you still want to be regarded as somebody who is reliable, just because, the audience is going to be into it, obviously, and your bandmates are not going to be very stressed out about you as a player, because I've been in situations where you'd kind of go into a song, it's a really easy ballad-esque type of thing. The original kind of solo has that melody line that I was talking about, and then you just get somebody like blasting a super fast like saxophone solo or piano solo on top of it. And in my opinion, if you're gonna do that, at least try to keep it tasteful. Too many notes are not very, very much welcome at weddings or at any other type of events where people just want to have fun listening to songs that they've heard before. However, there are instances, and I'm not playing devil's advocate here, because I've actually approached this from both angles to the extreme, and I kind of found a middle lane. I've had instances where people from the particular event would just show up with like super last minute requests, to where you're out in the parking lot, with one of your friends that hopefully has perfect pitch, and you're kind of trying to figure out the chords to a song. So yeah, but those are situations that, they're pretty extreme, and I don't wish this upon a lot of people, really. And, there you might actually, have like an excuse, look, we didn't have time to prepare the song, let's just, kind of improvise through it and do solos and stuff, because it's a special request, people are gonna dig it, and you just kind of try to survive, and that's all. Now, when I said that I've approached this from both angles, the first cover band that I played in, I was that douchebag that just blasted fast, shreddy licks all over Sweet Home Alabama, and that was so distasteful looking back at it. I just don't want to do that again. Now, not to bash people that are saying, hey, don't be a jukebox and bring your own to the table. And here are a few situations in which I still do that to this day. This song obviously has a very rock and roll vibe to it. It's very like, swingy, dancey kind of feel, and it definitely has no place for a sweeped major 7 arpeggio there, or any type of fast run like that, really. However, this song is kind of a filler that we do at the end of a more kind of rock and roll-ish set, where the energy levels are at really high, and I have a lot of respect for the guitar player that originally wrote and recorded this solo, and I kept about, I want to say, 70% of it accurate, because I really dig it. But in that case, I've had my piano player come up to me and say, hey, look, man, spice it up, shred it a bit, because the song is gonna end with another chorus right after that solo, and we just gotta bring the energy levels up. So that's a place where I actually enjoyed doing this. Now, and I've also had other instances where the solo might have been recorded like on acoustic or nylon string, and it's a very, very smooth, ballady kind of everything's arpeggiated type of stuff. So in that case, I'm playing electrical guitar for 100% of the gig, or at least I was last year. This season I'm probably gonna include that nylon string guitar, just because of that flamenco-esque solo that I've played and talked about. But up until then, I was just using like my trusty old Ibanez AZ Prestige over here, and I was dealing with a song that was recorded again on nylon string, and it was so slow, and it had like such a vibey thing to it. I'm talking about a certain song that is from a nationally famous rock band, but they originally recorded it on some nylon string guitar and doubled it maybe with a clean electric guitar or something, I don't know, but definitely it didn't lend itself to the live situation in which I was playing, to where I'm actually holding an electric guitar for 100% of the set, or at least I was back in the previous season. So what I did, I just adapted, kept the melody, put on a bit of an overdrive pedal and a delay, gave it a more rockish kind of vibe, and inserted some of my own stuff at some point, and resolved back to the melody, because you do want to keep these melodies. They're pretty important. Right? And it goes on, So yeah, this is where I kind of added a bit of my own thing, just because I thought it was helping me out in my life situation too. And then you just kind of go back to the melody. And everybody's happy, and probably nobody noticed that I kind of snuck that little bit in. And I feel good about myself as a player because I think I'm doing fast stuff on guitar. Ooh, and for some reason, I still think that's cool. And now let's address the bringing your own into the mix kind of argument, because obviously it worked for Dirty Loops, right? They're an amazing band, and they just have these insane fusion-ish takes on very, very well-known international pop hits, right? That's what made them go viral. They're amazing musicians, and you're gonna want to hire that band specifically for that type of sound that they bring. Now, of course, you have a plethora of bands that do like metal versions of pop songs, pop versions of metal songs, you name it. There's a market for everything. And in that kind of scenario, yeah, you kind of want to rearrange songs and reinterpret them and, bring your own musicality and your own vocabulary to the idea. And, doing a unique spin on certain classic songs or very, very popular songs, then you're gonna have a world of fun, and you're supposed to actually bring your own musicality to the table and rearrange these. And yeah, that's something great. And in my opinion, I think it's becoming kind of like this niche kind of genre where you have all sorts of bands doing their own interpretation of that. So it's cool, and I get where that person was coming from when he was saying that. So there are definitely songs where maybe the guitar solo or the solos are not, the main aspect of the song, and that's where you have a lot of room to improvise, especially like maybe if you want to do a longer version of it because you see that people are enjoying that particular song. And it is something that my band does a lot, because the band leader is right next to me, and he's gonna say, okay, do a guitar solo here, double the chorus. People are dancing, bring in the saxophone, bring in the violin. It's a very dynamic situation, and it's a very good skill to have, to actually be able to bring some of your own or improvise over those songs and those tonalities, just like that, because you never know when when your bandmates are gonna ask that from you in a live situation. So bringing your own, or being able to bring your own, is equally as important as learning the actual material, because at least in my mind, if you know the song note for note, then you have kind of room to improvise over it and just, play with it, because you're still a musician at the end of the day. You're still a guitar player. You still want to have fun with that stuff. So it is important. Just make sure not to overdo it, not to overplay. I mean, I've seen a band maybe over 12 years ago now in my hometown. Fantastic players, all of them. And they were playing this pub. Of course, it was a cover gig, right? And the guitar players, one of them was kind of like this jazz guy playing a 3-3-5, very tastefully following the chords, playing through the changes. And the other guitar player was more of this prog fusion kind of electrical player, doing all that Greg Howe kind of stuff and a lot of tapping. And fantastic musicians, and all of them were super, super good. But what happened at that point was they were playing a pub in a very small town, and they were a cover band, so they did all of these like pop songs that you heard on the radio, but the structure ended up being kind of like the same, the same dynamic. So you have like intro, verse, chorus, then you'd have like maybe 5 minutes of these awesome guitar players improvising over that, and then maybe you'd have like the second verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and they'd end the song. And the entire set ended up just being like this long guitar solo. And you could tell that however phenomenal those guys were, it's not that they didn't understand the gig or the situation, but they weren't the type of band that were actually rehearsing constantly or operating constantly as a band. They just kind of did this as a side hustle, and they had this dynamic going on just because they were very, very good improvisers. And they said, hey, look, let's just do intro, verse, chorus, long guitar solos, and end on a high note, and it is what it is. But what ended up happening was that by the end of the evening, a lot of the people that were at the gig just started, kind of tuning out the band, and they were doing their own stuff, talking, and Of course, the musicians were highly impressed. I was there, and I was talking to the band actually, and I asked them, "Hey, do you do rehearsals or something?" And they said, "No, man, not at all. We just here's a list of the songs. Here are the keys we play them in, and let's just meet each other at the gig and play." There's nothing wrong with that, but in certain situations, it can kind of get a bit over the top. So when it comes to this debate, and it's a great debate to have, and it's an age-old one, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, you're going to have a variety of musicians in a band, and they're all going to have their own opinion on how they do their thing. And especially in cover bands, let's be honest, after a while, you kind of feel like, you're just playing somebody else's music, which you are, and that can get a bit stale. And you're gonna want to bring some of your own personality, skills, and playing into the equation. And if you do it in a tasteful way, and if you're not completely changing the drum intro to songs like Painkiller or doing tap shred stuff over Sweet Home Alabama, it's gonna be fine. And at the end of the day, how I'm probably gonna tackle that feeling of playing other people's music and just kind of sprinkling my own ideas here and there where they're not infringing upon the song or the dynamics of the show. I always encourage people that if they have the time, try working on your own ideas. This is one of the reasons why I do this YouTube channel nowadays, because I want to bring some cool stories to people, and maybe some of my own musical ideas in the future, because I'm working on some. And it's a great way to have a creative outlet without starting a apartment black metal solo project.